A preacher's little boy took notice of his father one Sunday, and as they were going home, the little boy said, "Dad, I noticed that before you stand up to preach, that you have your eyes closed and your head bowed. What are you doing?" And the dad, so thrilled that his son was asking such important questions, said, "Well, I'm praying for God to give me a good sermon." And the little boy, without missing a beat, said, "Well, why hasn't God done that yet?" I hope God has given me one this morning. I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer. Oh God, as we have gathered here in this, our sacred space, to sing praises to you, to lift up our joys and concerns, and to commune at the table, and to encourage each other. Be with us now as we begin the portion of the service where we break open your word and hear an ancient story, possibly in a new way, and see how we might apply that to our lives as we talk about peace this Advent season. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing and acceptable to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So picture, if you will, living in Judah at the time of the prophet Isaiah. You find yourself in a time where the poor are getting poorer because the rich are continuing to oppress the poor, and the rich are in fact getting richer and richer at the expense of the poor. You find yourself in a time where things are anything but peaceful. You have had one king after another, after another, after another, through the lineage of David, and things have just become to be a mess. There is no peace in your home or in your lives. People are judged by the way they look and the way they act and the way they dress rather than the content of their character. And things are just not as they should be. And you have this uneasy feeling all the time as you're going from day to day. Now imagine that you're there, and some would argue that we're not that far from there in some ways today in our own societies. But it was sure enough hard for them during the time of Isaiah. So put yourselves there. And all of a sudden you have this prophet named Isaiah that is coming to you, sometimes declaring gloom and doom, or reality as you might have seen it if you were living in that day, with a little bit of hope and a little bit of peace mixed into some of those prophecies. And just imagine that the prophet Isaiah, when you're experiencing all of this, comes to you and says things are going to get better. How many of you have ever in your lifetime, show of hands, been in a situation that just absolutely stunk? And somebody said to you, "Oh, it's going to get better." Raise your hand, you ever been there? Keep your hand up if you believe them. Not at that time, probably not. It's kind of like when somebody like me or Enrique gets all revved up and you say, "Calm down," it never works. That is, I think, the situation that the prophet Isaiah found himself in with the people at this time. They were exhausted. The Assyrians had been coming after them, and they thought that was their worst threat, and now all of a sudden the Babylonians were coming, and they're a worse threat than the Assyrians ever hoped to be. And here is Isaiah saying that there will be, in Isaiah chapter 11, verses 1 through 10, and this is our Retelling Sunday, so I'm not going to read it to you word for word, but I want you to go home and I want you to read this prophecy. Think about what it means to you and what it's saying to you. But in Isaiah chapter 11, verses 1 through 10, the prophet Isaiah says to them, there will be a shoot come out of the stump of Jesse. And from those roots, a new leader will come forward. And that new leader is going to be different than any other leader that you have ever experienced before. Now, you're probably, if you were living at that time, and if I was there, I would certainly be saying this, oh, we've heard this song and dance before. Every leader that's coming next is going to be better than the one before, and then we continue to be worse off than we were before. So think about that as Isaiah goes on to say, and from that, there's going to be a peaceful kingdom. That word peace that you haven't experienced in a long, long time, Isaiah tells you this is what you're going to experience with this new king that will be coming one day. But they couldn't see the bright future ahead of them because they were stuck in the mess of today, or they were thinking about the mess of yesterday. Sound familiar? We sometimes can't see what's going to happen later and get excited about what's down the road because we're stuck in the mess of right now. Or we're thinking about the mess that was before. Or so many people, you don't have to raise your hand if you're one of them, are just waiting for the next shoe to drop. And so because you're waiting for the next shoe to drop, there is no peace. So you're thinking about all of this, and then Isaiah comes out and he says, you know what? This is how it's going to look when the new king comes, and there is a peaceful kingdom. The lion will lay down with the lamb. And imagine yourself rolling your eyes as you're thinking about the predator lying down with the prey. Because you know what it feels like to have been the prey. And not only does he say the lion will lay down with the lamb, he goes on even further to say that the bear and the cow will both eat hay in the same field. A bear is going to become a vegetarian. That would be about like somebody telling you that I was going to become a vegetarian. And so you're thinking to yourself, this cannot be. Again, because you can't see the future because the present is so messy. This was the situation that the people in Judah were finding themselves in during the time of the prophet Isaiah. And this was the situation that the prophet Isaiah found himself in. So we're talking today about peace as we look ahead to Advent. Last week was hope. And I do, as I said in Bible study, if you were there, I shared that I do find hope in this particular prophecy as well as peace. But while we are waiting for Christmas during this Advent season, let us not neglect to continue to work for peace. Let us not neglect to be hopeful about a peaceful future. Because so often it is so hard in the midst of chaos to experience peace. And I shared in Bible study that I'm struck by this analogy and this word picture that the prophet shares of a stump and a shoot coming out of the stump. And I've seen it, and you probably have too, of a stump that looks dead in the woods, and all of a sudden there's something green sprouting out of it, and Sean, our master gardener, could probably explain that to you far more eloquently than I can. But the stump of the tree looks dead, but the roots are still viable, and a new life springs up out of that. Isaiah is saying to the people, the world around you may look dead. The world around you may look like there's nothing worth living for, but rooted and having a good support system in the root, new life will spring from that. And as I have been thinking about that, I've been thinking about my own life where there have been times and situations or relationships or attitudes, whatever it may be, where something really just needed to be cut down so that something fresh and new could grow from the roots of what was there before. And sometimes we're the ones that have to do the work to cut that down. Sometimes we are the ones that need to be out there doing the peacemaking. And peacemaking is not something that we sit idly by and wait for it to happen. We're out there doing it. And we have so many peacemakers in this congregation. So many of you that are working to make the world a better place and a more peaceful place for everyone. I get to see it all the time. There are peacemakers here that quietly leave at some point in the service and go to the Sunday school room and teach Sunday school. They are actively being peacemakers, working quietly behind the scenes, teaching our youngest friends and family that there is a better world waiting. There are peacemakers that each week count the money and oversee how money is spent. You heard from some of our peacemakers this morning when we were doing our budget talks in our stewardship ministry, actively working toward peace in their own ways. The food pantry and all of you that volunteer in one way or another, actively working for peace. Not just talking about a new world, not just talking about the way things could be down the road, showing people today what the world could be like if we all worked toward peace. We stand every Sunday and sing, "Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me." During this Advent season, peace can't wait. Neither should we. May it be so. Amen.